One of the things that we know is that there definitely is a strong mind-body connection across for every human being. And then it becomes quite intense when someone experiences trauma. And that's where there's a lot of stuff that subconsciously can happen that we are not in control of whatsoever to extremes. Right? So one of those things, those moments that stood out to me, and I always remembered it, was that instructor was saying, sometimes you'll actually physically see some of the injuries, like the scars reappear or something like that if someone's been physically injured during their traumatic experience. It's giving me goosebumps because I have a lived experience of it with a client, and I'm happy to share that story too.
Hey, it's Brad, and boy, am I happy you're here. If this is your first time, I'm really glad you found us. You're not going to be disappointed. And if you've been here before, welcome back. This is Pain to Performance. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Man, Dr. Kyrstin, how are you doing this morning?
I am so good. I'm so happy to be here, Brad.
I cannot begin to say how excited I am to have you as my first guest. I have been looking forward to getting this kicked off. And you were the first person that came to mind for my recording, simply for the fact that I know the type of information that is about to be exposed here, and the type of help that you bring for individuals, right? So I know about your credentials, right? But I would love for you to just kind of give me just a brief introduction about who you are, where you've came from, and where your passions lie as far as why you decided to become Dr. Kyrstin.
Yeah, thanks for opening it up. Yeah, I could go in so many directions there, but the bottom line is I'm some girl from Columbus, Georgia. That's where I was raised. That's where I grew up. I graduated high school like everyone else, and then I went to college and I studied psychology and all those kinds of things. And I also went to Georgia State for some of my degrees, my master's degree and my education specialist degree, and then UNT for my doctorate. And your question wasn't really about my resume, but about how I came to be here.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, I am some girl from Columbus, Georgia. And part of my story and journey was around my parents getting divorced and remarried and what that experience was like for me. And then as I grew older, someone in my family had mental health issues. Other people started developing substance abuse issues. And those all impacted me, right? They impacted our whole family and people around us. And I just felt like, I think I can do maybe better than some of these therapists that we were interacting with. I was like, this is really helpful. Even just the sense of, I don't feel like you get what I'm saying, right? And like, how can you be helpful if you don't even understand or aren't listening?
So let me ask you this question. Whenever you're in your doctorate programs, your master's programs, there's more to psychology than just what's going on inside the brain, right? Would you agree with that statement?
100%.
So doing what I do, right? Especially as a massage therapist, I have to kind of understand what's going on from a psychological standpoint, right? I am by no means a doctor in psychology, right? But I have to have a little bit of understanding of where traumas can lie and how that can actually fall into our bodies. So did you ever kind of discuss what we call the mind-body connection while you were in school? Or was that more of a self-journey type of situation? Can you tell me about that? Is there like some actual education on this, or is this something that you kind of discover as you're moving forward?
What a wonderful question. Okay, so let me start with that. So I had some incredible instructors in my master's program, and one of them was definitely probably in my top 3 instructors of all time. And this person actually ended up teaching a lot about trauma in our courses, which was very relevant because I interned doing trauma work. And so I took the crisis and trauma class from that instructor, part of the formal education. And one of the things that we know is that there definitely is a strong mind-body connection, right? Period, across for every human being. And then it becomes quite intense when someone experiences trauma. And that's where there's a lot of stuff that subconsciously can happen that we are not in control of whatsoever to extremes, right? So one of those things, those moments that stood out to me, and I always remembered it, was that instructor was saying, sometimes you'll actually physically see some of the injuries, like the scars reappear or something like that if someone's been physically
Wow.
injured during their traumatic experience.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you really quick, but that's super fascinating. So you're
Yes,
telling me that scars and injuries will reappear as people are going through trauma?
they can. When you're processing it,
Really?
it's giving me goosebumps because I have a lived experience of it with a client, and I'm happy to share that story too.
That's
Right?
incredible. Like at this point, as soon as you say that, there's like 7, 8, maybe 9 people, even myself, that I'm like, I need to send this podcast to them immediately, right? Simply
Yeah.
for the fact of just that one simple situation. So I know there's a lot more to this, but I kind of want to dive in on that. That is extremely interesting. So are we talking about things that have just completely healed over time that have the ability to resurface? What
Yes.
exactly is there? Are we talking about soft tissue problems? Hopefully not total joint issues, but can you walk me through what that looks like?
Yeah. So also sometimes people get inflammation. So the joint issues, like I
Mm,
said, that like sometimes that can happen, right? It can kind of reappear, and our body and mind, they're so connected. And sometimes we forget that or just kind of try to pretend they're not. It's
yeah,
not possible because your body will scream at you. But what I'm
absolutely.
speaking, right? Like what I'm speaking
Yeah.
about specifically in this situation is that when you're processing trauma with someone as a therapist, you can sometimes, and maybe even if you're just talking about it with a friend or whatever, but you can sometimes see those healed soft tissue scar, even just like bodily marks. So
Wow.
the one specific event as I was processing some trauma with a client that stands out to me the most is that there was a young person who was in a car accident and there was a fatality. And this person was
Mm,
processing that. There was nothing visible on them, just as clear as your skin is right now. There was nothing I could see until we started talking about that experience and what was going on, what they were talking about before the accident happened and all that kind of stuff. And I saw where there was a scar on the cheek that started to appear,
mm,
right? And they were talking about, I got cut with the windshield on my face, and you could see it, like, because my theory is that
wow.
the blood starts rushing to those places as you're talking about it. And I could see the mark from the seatbelt across her
Wow.
chest right there. And so it was really incredible to witness that and to,
That
and
is crazy. So, has there been any type of study on this? Like, has this been studied at all? Or is it more of like just what people have experienced as they're working through the trauma, like people like yourself that have seen these types of things? Or is it more of like a true study, like scientific finding?
you know what? I wish I had brushed up on that before you and I started
That's totally
talking
fine.
today. I'm sure there are studies now. I mean, that was something I know that's well known in the field. We talk about it a lot. I'm sure there are studies. I just can't cite one right now.
Totally fine.
Yeah, and if I
That's
find one, I can send you a link to it or whatever. But that,
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. And I would put that in the show notes for people to be able to go read on that. So, listeners,
yeah,
if you're interested in learning more about that, like I am, I will definitely be doing my best to try to make sure that I get that for you guys. So, I'm sorry, I kind of divulged off of our pathway here,
no, you're fine.
but you're talking about the mind body connection, right? And that right there is like a absolutely perfect example of what we're talking about today. So let's talk about like misconceptions of that type of connection though. Like whenever you have individuals that come into your office, right? And you ask them and you say, "Hey, have you ever heard of the mind body connection before?" Right? Maybe you probably don't frame the question that way, but and they start to talk to you about it. What is it that you hear that isn't necessarily always true? Exactly how is it that you try to educate your patients, and what is it that you say to them for them to be able to actually understand what this is?
What a beautiful question. So I usually kind of what I call go through the back door, where it's
Okay.
not necessarily, especially at the beginning, straightforward conversation. So what we call that is psychoeducation, what you're saying, like information and providing that information
Mhm.
to someone. So I
Mhm.
don't mind doing that directly. But most of the time, especially when I feel like somebody does have a misconception or they're resistant to the idea of my mind and body are strongly connected, is I will use what we call immediacy. Right. And so
Mm.
that means like here and
Okay.
now in this moment, when I see them and if I notice their shoulders are tense as they're talking, I will just notice it. Oh, I noticed your shoulders moved up as you were talking about that. And they will automatically put them down.
Mm.
So I'm
That
teaching.
is some NLP shit right there. That is like some neurolinguistics programming if I've ever heard it in my life. Like, I've done a lot of research on that myself. I use NLP techniques a lot with my patients. And there's something incredible about the subconscious, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. So whenever you're saying the back door, you're talking about the subconscious. But I know whenever we've spoken in the past, you said that therapists, they're always thought that people are trying to psychoanalyze them, right? And we'll get to that in a minute. But like whenever I heard the backdoor concept, I just want to make sure that we clarify we're talking about the subconscious mind, right?
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
What I'm doing is actually bringing what's subconscious to the conscious, right?
Okay.
Someone is unaware and it's in their subconscious that my body is reacting. When I say it and they feel it and they respond, that's bringing that to their awareness. And that's how people change, right? Is we develop
Yeah.
that insight can only come when something is moved from the subconscious to the conscious mind. And so that is the back door, right? But it is also literally, and sometimes I tell people this in trauma work, I'll say, I'm not even like talking to you, I'm talking to your subconscious. Like, I don't know, you already know this. And most people have that response, right? And
Yeah.
it's disarming and they love it. And that's when they can be receptive to, yeah, you're right. This is because it's not about your intellect.
Yeah.
I know we're not just
Absolutely.
talking about trauma, but trauma does not happen on an intellectual level. Okay? Nobody
Ooh.
traumatized by being cussed out or being called names or things like that. It happens at a subconscious level where your power is taken. That's the trauma, right? It is the
Wow, that's
lived
real.
experience of being horrified or being in fear of your life or the lives around you, like witnessing someone being murdered, for example, or things like that, or someone being attacked, or any number of different events. Someone being in a car accident can be vicariously traumatic for somebody watching that happen. So there are lots of different ways people can be traumatized. But the main point is our bodies will respond to that traumatic experience, even if we try to intellectualize it, because that's not
Wow.
intellectual. That is fear, right? Our bodies are
Yeah.
responding to the fear in a traumatic situation. And they will communicate with us and they will shut down and they will give us headaches and stomach aches and diarrhea and constipation and all the muscle tension that you see, all that soft tissue damage and the knots in people's backs and legs and everywhere else. Like that is how trauma lives in the body and will slide on in there. Even if we're aware that I'm experiencing this traumatic event, our bodies will still do the most to try to protect us and keep us safe.
And it's so interesting that you say that because a lot of times whenever I have clients that come in and I look at it kind of from like almost an energetic perspective, right? I hold that in a very special place. I believe that it exists, but I don't put a lot of stock into it, right? But the idea is we have the feminine side, masculine side of the bodies, right? Feminine energy, masculine energy, and feminine tends to be like more self-care, self, right? Masculine tends to be how it is that we like actually outward project ourselves and like really carry ourselves inside of our life, right? And then there's also parts of the body that I have found that store certain types of trauma, right? So what I have found is, and this is me personally, that any form of emotional trauma tends to be stored in the hips of individuals. And whenever I start working in those areas, I instantly know that this person has been through some trauma because they start doing one of two things. They either start to giggle, right? They start to laugh and they're like, I don't know why that tickles. And I'll say, it's totally fine. Tickle means tension, right? And then I kind of divulge into the situation and start to talk to them about what's going on, right? This is normally what happens whenever I'm here. Are we okay, right? And then I kind of give and hold the space for them to discuss that if they need to, right? So the idea is like really that shows there that the mind and the body are really working together at this point. And the idea of the misconception that it's intellectual and that we have to have been through some type of a intellectual trauma, right? You were saying earlier that individuals don't get traumatized from words, right? They tend to get traumatized from action, right? That's what I gathered from that. And for people, like whenever we go through those types of things are stored into the body, right? And you brought up earlier as well, talking about the scars and the tension in people's shoulders, right? A lot of times I have people that come in and they're like, I'm so stressed. My shoulders are so bad. My back hurts. And I've always oftentimes wondered, are you talking to anybody about actually what's going on in your life? Or are you just having to shoulder everything? And that's the reason why your shoulders are now touching your ears, right? So I think where my question lies here is whenever you're speaking with people, instead of having to backdoor it, right? If we don't have to talk to the subconscious to tell them to lower their shoulders, have you noticed in your practice that as people begin to talk about the trauma and heal from that trauma, that their body starts to relax? Or do they always stay in that idea of fight or flight?
Gosh, yeah, if they're not relaxing, I'm not doing it right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I want
Interesting.
to see that. I want as we heal, I want this client, I want to see them shift. Those are some of the shifts I'm looking for is body language,
Hmm.
right? I'm looking for the tension to be more reduced. I'm looking really like part of that journey is before I just notice reduced tension and all
Mm.
that. What I'm looking for is awareness of that, where they
Mm.
catch
So
themselves.
awareness piece. Okay.
Right? So awareness has to occur first before we actually start noticing that they can self-correct and usually that the tension's gone. Now, that's different with children because I'm not going to have the same conversations,
Sure. That
right?
makes
And
sense.
treated children. So that I will look for just the actual physical body differences or
Mm.
emotional freedom and like are they more
Mm.
playful? Are they more
Sure.
silly? Like things like that.
Yeah.
But with adults, I can look for that too. So I'm looking for exactly what you just did, right? The tension in the
Yeah.
smile in the face. And sometimes it's, furrowed brows and all that. Even that
Mm.
is an indicator to me that there is something going on that if this client isn't discussing openly, they may say, I don't know what to talk about today. Everything's going well. Right. So I'm looking to
I've been there.
your affect is matching what you're saying.
Mm.
So I will hold that space.
Wow.
Hey, I noticed that you're saying everything's going well, and at the same time, your brows are furrowed.
Hmm.
Or I'll just do something like, I
Hmm.
see this happening for you. And then they will be able to respond to that and like, yeah, I don't know what that's about. I'm like, if you did know.
Right? And that's so interesting because as you say this, I'm in therapy. I was out of therapy for a minute, and I will tell you what, like being back in therapy has been the best thing. Listeners, like if you're not in therapy, get into some therapy.
Hell
It
yeah.
is just it is just good for you,
For
right?
all of us. For all of us.
Even and there's so many people that I have in my life that are like, I don't need to go to a therapist. I have nothing wrong with me. And I'm like, first of all, like, what a bold statement for you to
Right?
make,
First
right?
of all,
Like,
let me analyze you for a second.
I know. And it's like, and it doesn't even take a PhD for me to be able to be like, you
Exactly.
lying, like you
Right?
got some issues. I've known you for 12
He's
years.
so
You
for
need to
real.
be going,
Yes.
you know? So, but for those individuals that think that way, right? What is the one thing that you would tell them? What is like the first step that they should make to be able to try to make their lives better?
Gosh, again, great question. Listen, you don't have to be at your wit's end and you don't have to have something so terribly wrong with you to start therapy. There's also this whole idea of personal growth, right? And that's
Mm.
part of where this idea for me to be a coach was birthed. I was like,
Mm.
not everybody meets criteria for a diagnosis, and there's still so much room for people to grow. And I have found that people like that are more open to the thought of just personal
Mm-hmm.
growth than they
Sure.
are counseling because they do think, and sometimes people don't think like you have to be crazy. That is a stigma. You have to be crazy to go to counseling. I find that
It's
less and
unfortunate.
less, right? It's very unfortunate,
Sure.
but I find that stigma to be less and less and more of, nothing's that wrong with me, right? And it's like, oh yeah, you don't have to have something wrong with you to go improve yourself. Or like,
Love that.
right? Like, what if life could be happier? What if life could feel a little easier?
Mm.
A lot of it is our mindset and our mentality.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
right, I find that some people who are resistant to that, to therapy in general, are also struggling with they will be a burden to someone else. If I
Wow, you nailed it right there. 100%.
right?
Absolutely. That is so accurate. And looking back on it, I'm thinking about one specific individual right now that's in my life that has absolutely said over and over and over again, I don't want to be a burden to somebody. How do they get past that, Dr. Kyrstin?
Well, talking about it would be a really good step, right? Because the truth is that somewhere along the line, likely in childhood, they received the message that when you express your needs, it's a burden.
Hmm.
When you ask for help,
Hmm.
you're burdening your parents, right? When you need something, your needs are not normal human needs. Your needs are greater than other people's. And generally, that is just not true.
Mm.
The message is wrong, right? Most of the time, I could say with confidence that your needs are human, normal human needs. Your needs are
I love
basic,
that.
right? And so being a burden to someone, that's not a realistic thing. So we could talk about and talk through that whole idea of like, not only did, where did it come from, but also how true is that,
Mm. I
right?
love that. Yeah. And the thing is like, I will tell you, a lot of the people that come to mind for me do tend to be high achievers, right? They do tend to be high achievers because the idea is, and believe me, I know this because I also deal with it myself, right? Is I have to shoulder everything, right?
Mhm.
I have to continue to perform. If I don't perform, then everything's going to fall, right? And again, while I'm in therapy, I understand this is what we're calling the death spiral, right? And,
Yeah.
and there's ways for us to be able to work through that. And I'm actively learning those ways. But I have found that a lot of those individuals are those high achievers, right? And it's causing a misalignment for them, right? It's causing a misalignment, not just for their career, right? But also for their mental health. And without your mental health, you can't have that career, right?
Really, it's
So
not sustainable.
it is. So if we're talking about like functioning versus aligned, right? If we're talking about being able to actually like get up, brush our teeth, go through the daily habits, right? And for us to just continue forward with whatever trauma we have inside of us or whatever thoughts that might be eating us up at night, right? And we take that versus what somebody like you could give us, right? Which is that alignment, the ability to actually be able to see things for what they are, right? Do you see that the higher achievers, right? Do you see that they have more of the issue with functioning versus alignment rather than individuals that maybe are a little bit more okay with the status quo? Have you seen that? Or do you just feel that everybody in this world always has that issue with functioning versus
Think that there is, I think it would be fair to say that that can happen to anyone, right?
fair? Okay.
I think that with high achievers specifically, I see a lot of perfectionism, right? So
Mm,
part of my coaching is really around that. Like I'm targeting high achieving people, especially
mm,
women in their own fields, right? Whatever that is. I've been working with pharmacists and PhDs and very high earners, CEOs, like
mm,
C-suite executives in general.
yeah.
And that perfectionism piece usually is hand in hand with high achievers, right?
Mm, yeah, sure.
So,
That makes total sense.
yeah, and that perfectionism, how we define perfectionism, going back to your question, is really around I can't ask for help because that would mean I'm imperfect, right? I can't
Yeah.
cry about this because that would mean I have feelings and feelings are weakness. There's a lot of that in corporate America too. It's like we leave our feelings at the door and then I mean that is a huge component of who we are and it's not true, right?
Yeah.
We can't feasibly leave our feelings somewhere and bring the rest of ourselves with.
Mm,
It is always beneficial to have a balance. And that's
mm,
the other piece that I see is high achievers are lacking that balance of awareness of their own bodies, right?
mm.
Even if they work out, even if they take care of themselves in their diet and they're thin, right? You see it too. There's
I absolutely see it.
total lack of emotional balance a lot of the time because of those messages that they've received. Success equals you're on your own, right? Like success equals like I have to do it by myself.
And the thing is like I can relate to this on a personal level, right? So Dr. Kyrstin, I was laid off from my corporate IT position back in February, right?
Mhm.
Of this year of 2025. And I have been applying left and right for positions, right? And I will tell you this right now. I have received more no in this 8 months, 10 months than I have ever received in my life.
Mm,
And for somebody like me that does like to tend to think that they are a high performer, right? Somebody that will just keep going until that job gets done, right? That takes a huge mental hit. It
yeah.
takes a huge mental hit. I will tell you, I went into therapy one day and I want to share this with everybody listening right now because I know somebody is struggling with this as well. And if you know somebody that's struggling with what it is I'm about to say, you have got to send it to them because I need everybody to hear this. My therapist said that self self-worth is like a high yield saving account. You cannot take out of it. You can only add to it.
Mm.
And once I heard that, that was the light bulb freaking moment for me where I was like, she is freaking right. I've done all of this stuff, just ripping and pulling. I am negative in my balances right now. My self-worth is so low. My confidence is low because my self-worth is low. Because like you said earlier, I tied my self-worth to my corporate position.
Yeah.
I tied my self-worth to my ability to make money and provide for my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that created such a toxic culture in my own mind,
Yes.
right? And to think that I know there are other individuals out there that are experiencing and dealing with the same exact thing, right? What is like an early warning sign for individuals once they start having those types of thoughts? What is like the early warning signs that they're like, wait a minute, I'm starting to deduct from that high yield savings account as self-worth. I need to do something of this sort. Like, what are some early warning signs that people should look out for?
Yeah, I think you are talking all around it, right? The self-talk itself is an early warning sign. When you start noticing and paying attention, that's one of the biggest things that I could ever gift anyone is the awareness of what are you thinking about yourself, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are like, I don't know. Well, I don't believe that. I think that it's hard to articulate it, right? So that doesn't mean I think someone's a liar. I think they just aren't aware of how to articulate it. And so that's the next thing we work on is like, I want you to start writing it down or start talking to me right now, especially if we see something happening in real time. Then that's the immediacy that I like to use. Otherwise, we might go back to an example that they're talking about. Like this weekend, I was, having a hard time and whatever. What were you thinking then? I don't know. I just felt bad. You did feel bad. So then we'll piece out those, what does bad mean? Right? Like all of those emotions. And then I will make what we call metacognitive guesses around what do I think you're thinking?
Okay.
Right? And so then they get to think about their own thoughts. And that is a different level of consciousness than just having thoughts and then thinking about your thoughts. So that's called metacognition. And that's what I want people to get awareness of is let's start thinking about what you're thinking about.
Man, and like, if there are therapists out there listening right now, they're like, why are you giving away all of our secrets, right? Because
I'm just going to give up for free.
Because like right now, I'm looking back on my own personal therapy and I'm like, well, damn,
that's
my
what she was
therapist has been doing that to me,
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, but that's where my growth comes from.
That's exactly right.
And that's the moment, like whenever I start having those light bulb moments is whenever I start second guessing what it is I'm thinking. Right? Because again, it all comes from that freaking high yield savings account of self-worth.
Yes.
Right. And whenever I'm telling you, I am telling it to everybody I know right now. I mean, every single person. I'm like, you were worth something. Stop allowing everything else that is happening in your life right now to continue to put you deeper and deeper and deeper into the ditch.
Huh.
Like it's and understanding those early warning signs of that negative self-speak is so important. And I think that, like, I'm sorry to be on my soapbox and rant here for a minute, but I think it's just so vital, Dr. Kyrstin, like for individuals to feel that they don't have anything to offer society is just heartbreaking to me, right?
Yes.
It's heartbreaking.
Right.
So like,
may I offer something?
Yes, please.
Okay. To someone who is in that state of mind, one of the ways that I start to challenge that is I will ask, like, okay, so if you feel like you don't have value if you're not working, do you feel like other people who aren't working don't have any value? Well, no. I mean, there are different circumstances and reasons, and right? There's usually always some kind of no, other people are different. And so I will often bring up, sure, that sounds like a double standard. And how come you could be the asshole in every double standard, right? Like literally will say, Brad, what makes you so special that you're the worst and everyone else is just fine, right? Like what makes you so special that you got fired from your IT job and received all these rejections? And that means something about your value as a human being versus someone else in the same or similar situation, but they're okay. They still have value, but you like, I want you to actually answer the question, what makes you more special than them? And no one
Mm.
can answer that.
Yeah, because it's impossible to do so. Like, I'm sure there's some type of like actual clinical word for this, right? And the thing is like the whole idea of the show is not to have clinical jargon, right? As long as we break it down. But the idea is I'm sure that there's something there that is an actual definition of what you're saying, right? Maybe it's like cognitive
Dissonance.
dissonance? Okay, that's
That's
what I
what
was
I'm trying
thinking.
to create there. It's like, I want you to really think about, because I think people are special. But what makes this person who's in this mindset of I'm the worst, I'm bad, I'm not a good provider,
Mm,
I'm a terrible person, I don't have any worth, or my worth is affected by this situation I find myself in,
mm,
right? I want
yeah.
them to struggle with, yeah, what does make me so negatively special? And
Mm,
sometimes we will discover, like I said just a second ago, no one can answer that. And what I mean is, no one can give me an answer that I'm going to believe and hold on to. People can
okay.
answer, and sometimes those answers come from messages they've received in their lifetimes. Like, I have to be perfect, right? So if I am not getting this next job, or I got laid off, that means that I'm a high achiever who is now imperfect. And who the fuck am I? Right?
Mm,
It
yeah.
fundamentally messes with people's self-identity.
Mm,
And that's when we have to explore all of that. Like, where did these messages come from? One of the most powerful things that I personally heard and continue to use with myself and clients, coaching and otherwise with counseling, is you don't have to believe everything you think.
that is so good.
Right?
I
Because
love that.
those negative thoughts we have are fleeting, but then we capture them and hold on to those. So why don't we treat the positive ones with just as much weight, right?
Mm,
And why is it that we
yeah.
get to filter out our thoughts and say, no, everyone else is just pretty much okay, but I'm not? And so just challenging
Mm,
those beliefs can be so helpful, because sometimes we just end up believing what we think without any filter, without any challenge. And that's not fair
mm,
to ourselves, because those thoughts are not always true. They're not always good. They're not always accurate. And they're usually more detrimental than they are realistic,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
You do not
Man,
have to believe everything you think.
Dr. Kyrstin, you are so good at what you do. Like, I'm over here, I'm like, in the back of my head, I just hear, yes, right? And like, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's hearing that right now. There's got to be some other listener right now that is agreeing with that statement. So I want to take a moment to I want to backtrack real quick. And I know everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody. I'm sure there's quite a few people that also want to know the answer to what it is that I'm about to ask. And earlier you said there's something that had to have happened, right? Or something that could have happened that causes people to think this way, right? And you hear the joke all the time. Um, I'm going to send the bill to my parents because they're the ones that caused this issue, right?
Right.
Is that really true? Is it really true that the whole idea of that nature versus nurture situation, right? Does nurture really have that big of a hold on us if we're talking about maybe mind body connection, if we're talking about our mental load, right? Of how much we're carrying, things of that sort. Does that really actually matter? And if I am somebody listening right now, should I look back on my childhood? Or is that something that I should do with a professional?
Yeah, I think there's value to both. Okay. So you
Okay,
asked a couple different questions in there. I'm going to do my best to answer all of them.
that's totally fine.
I think there's value to starting the process of reflecting on your childhood on your own. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? I think there's also a ton of value in working with a professional to help slow you down and to help piece things out and to ask you the right questions. We're not here to
Mm,
make meaning for everyone. What we're here to do is facilitate the self-discovery. We're here to facilitate your own journey and to uncover things that you are thinking that you didn't know that you were thinking, right? Or things you believe that you didn't know you thought that you didn't know you believed. And
sure.
here to like kind of unravel that sweater, if you will, right? To help get deeper and deeper into somebody's self-conscious and all that kind of thing. We are also here definitely to understand that and to help people understand the social context in which anyone across cultures was raised does impact their life. Now, does that mean
Mm,
like I'm a victim, woe is me? No, we don't have to go to that extreme and really truly say every single thing I think and feel and believe about myself that's negative was because of my parents or because of who raised me, or
Mm.
I have to go there. That's not always true, because we can have really positive experiences and impact, and still the world is what it is. We are
Mm.
going to have friends that influence how we think of ourselves,
Sure.
partners throughout our lives that influence how we think of ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves. We are also going to have professors, teachers, bosses, right?
Yeah.
Everyone,
Absolutely.
anyone who has influence over us can
Mm.
influence how we think, feel, and believe about ourselves, especially when we're not consciously intentional about thinking things through in these helpful ways, not in the overthinking,
Mm.
ruminating ways. Those are not usually helpful because there's no resolution. Right? Rumination does not equal
Mm.
resolution of the thought. What does help is actually talking to a professional in those situations where you do find yourself overthinking. Right? Thinking is not a
Mm.
problem usually. Overthinking with no resolution is the issue that gets people in more and more trouble because they just
The
spiral down.
spiral. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I I'm again reflecting back on myself here. This is almost kind of therapy for myself, Dr. Kirsten. Oh, you can send me the bill later, right? But I'm looking back on some of my own issues, right? And I know I'm a death spiraler. I know I am. Like I am a chronically stressed, chronic anxiety. Like my peripheral nervous system is always under fire, right? I am in that fight or flight mode pretty much 90% of the time, right? And I feel that a lot of people would agree with that statement, right? And I look back on it and I say, okay, I know this is external factors that is causing this, right? I know it's that. Why am I allowing it to really interfere with my head in a way to where I am now so anxious that I just start thinking the worst of the worst? What is a piece of advice that you could give to somebody that is experiencing those types of thoughts to be able to help try to break that cycle? What
Okay.
is something somebody can do like today that would actually be able to give them the ability to try to break those cycles, to maybe try to recenter themselves, reground themselves, whatever it may be, to be able to help break that cycle?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is start referring to that description of yourself in the past tense.
Mm.
Say, I have
Okay.
been like that in the past.
Okay.
Instead of I am a death spiraler, I would encourage you to start saying, I have been
Okay.
in the past. Like that is a tendency that I have had.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Because what
Yeah.
you're doing is training your mind for the future. I can be different in the future. I can choose to handle things differently.
Mm.
So one thing that I do with lots of people coaching and counseling clients is when they're facing situations like this, one thing they can do right now today is start writing down the questions that they're having. What are the concerns? So for
Mm-hmm.
example, someone is an overthinker. That's usually anxiety, right? So, and the chronic stress too has likely come from a place of overcommitting or having all
Mm.
those thoughts that are just going, 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 going. And
Mm.
so, one thing we do is even in the session, we can write those things down. Let's get real clear. Clarity is the name of the game for me. So much
Mm.
so that my private practice for counseling is called Clear Life Counseling, right?
Okay. This makes sense.
Yeah, that is not by mistake. So that's one of the things that is a high value to me is we don't have to fix everything, but we do need to be clear on what it is that is happening and clear on some solutions if there are some. Some things in life we don't have solutions to besides to bear it. Other things in life we do get to have solutions for. So there are a
Mm.
couple things. One, again, I would have someone sit down with themselves, with a professional, with a friend, and say, okay, I am starting to spiral. I'm aware of that. I feel it in my body. Okay. And get to a place of a little bit more calm if they can by breathing and other exercises that they might do.
Mm.
If
Mm-hmm.
not, then start really trying to, I need to get a grasp on these thoughts that, like, what am I spiraling about? Right.
Mm.
So, an example, and I'm going to use your life that you shared with us already as an example,
Sure.
right? Is when you were let go in February of this year. And I'm assuming you went into a bit of a spiral when you were receiving months of rejections.
Sure. Yep.
Is
All
that
situational. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's all situational.
Situation,
Yep.
right?
Sure.
Those situations sometimes we apply to our value. Right?
Mm. Yes. Absolutely.
So what I would have someone in that situation do is like, what is the spiral about? Right. And so slow
Mm.
down and like name some sentences of the thoughts you're having. This means I'm a bad person. Right. And so I will actually literally get a piece of paper with the client or myself and I will start to write down, I'll say, here's the event. This is something I want to share because I feel it's so helpful.
Yeah.
And then we'll categorize different things. And sometimes I like to keep it in order, but sometimes it's tough for people to do that. So I will write where the things go. For the sake of people being able to read this, I'm going to write it small there. But we start with this is like, what's the event that has occurred? And that
Okay.
would be, I was let go from my job, right? Or the event could also be, I'm receiving multiple rejections.
Mm.
And then the thoughts with that. I think I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I think, and we start saying, okay, now what does that mean about you and who you are? What do you think that means about you if you can't pay your bills? Right? I think that I'm trash. I think that I'm useless. I think I'm not a good partner. I think I'm not a good father or mother or whatever. And then we'll try to get to within this, the beliefs, because the thoughts are usually above, and then the beliefs are just those core things with ourselves.
Absolutely.
We'll suss those out, and we'll also talk about the feelings. We'll talk about what you're thinking this, how are you feeling? We will label, write. Usually I have like 3 or 4 columns of feelings, and we'll just keep going till all of them are out. I feel worthless. I feel devalued. I feel disrespected. I feel angry. I feel hurt. I feel sad, right? I feel depressed, whatever, and all of them, right? And then we'll talk about what are some things that we can shift in the thoughts that will help this be more manageable. Because not working is not a choice for most people, right?
Sure.
So can we shift what it means to be successful a little bit? Can we shift, even working at a coffee shop? Would that, is that a feasible shift there? Could we shift and say, this doesn't mean that I'm not valuable. This means that the circumstances in 2025 with our economy is such that lots of people are having trouble finding work at a high level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
the things that people can do right now today to start getting more clarity, because this spiral is not serving anyone.
And I love it. So just for me to be able to recap for my own, right? I love tools, Dr. Kyrstin. So the first step is to really kind of start breaking the negative self-speak, right? It's
becoming
now past
aware
tense.
of it.
Becoming aware. Okay.
Right? Become aware of it and then name it in the past tense. Yes.
Got it. So we're aware, and then now we're going to say past tense, right? And then after that, the next thing for me to be able to do is either talk to somebody, something of that sort, or I can do the exercise that you just spoke to me about, right? And that was what? Events, thoughts, and beliefs, right? Is that correct?
Yes. And we want that. So it's events, thoughts, and feelings. So thoughts,
feelings,
and
feelings.
Got it. So we want that event to be one thing. If we can pinpoint, right? We don't want it to be I get rejected a lot in life. We generally want it to be
it needs to be very focused.
Right.
Got it. And that makes sense because, again, healing is supposed to be intentional, right? And I tell so many people that are on my massage table, I say, listen, I can only do as much as you're willing to let me do, right? Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people out there that have those mental blocks that say, I'm not going to be able to go much further with this. I'm stuck like this forever, right? And again, that's that negative self-speak that you're talking about. So maybe they could do a little bit of processing themselves, right? It kind of reminds me of something called the love process a little bit in coaching, right? So, and if anybody's interested in that, there's probably gonna be another episode about that at some point. But I really think that there is something just so valuable about being able to recognize what's happening and then being able to take some type of tool to be able to try to help you, right? And for us to understand that we're honoring what's happening without necessarily fixing it, right? Because let's be honest, if we try to fix it after we honor it and we're not able to fix it, what is that going to do to our self-worth and self-esteem? It's just going to skyrocket down again. So it's just something that I really want people to make sure that they're really thinking about. And I hope that they really gathered from our discussion today is that you are not broken. You're just overwhelmed, right? It's so okay to be overwhelmed. Things change. And again, I'm going to say it for the people in the back. Self-worth is a high yield savings account that you cannot withdraw from. You can only add to.
Right? I love that so much.
It's literally my favorite thing to be saying to everybody right now. And anybody that knows me knows I try my best to be very high energy, be very there for individuals in a way that it that everybody needs sometimes. I want to
Yeah.
be that person you call in the dark to help you find the light switch. Granted, I am not a licensed professional counselor, so if you need some real help, you need to be calling Dr. Kyrstin or somebody else. But if you just need somebody to be able to talk to, your friends are available. Like, you're not
Right.
a burden.
And I just want to say that you're also a good friend. Like, I know that we've known each other a little bit outside of this, but I have always seen that everyone speaks highly of you when your name comes up in a room.
Well, that
And
makes me feel good.
it's so true. I have
You're just
always,
talking to all the right people is the problem. I'm sure I've got some enemies out there, right?
and you know what that is? That could be realistic, but that could also be some negative self-talk, right? That you
Man, you called me out. You called me out. Do you ever put the Dr. Kyrstin life coach and coaching and psychologist situation down? Like I
no,
know there's a lot of people, right? But I also want people to understand that just because you have a LPC in your life does not mean they're always psychoanalyzing you, right?
no, that's
Right?
true.
What an exhausting thing to have to do.
No, and I don't have permission
Exhausting.
to do that for people, right?
Ooh, I love that even more. The fact that you said permission.
Hmm.
That
If I
is
don't
it
have the
right there.
permission to do that, then I'm really out of bounds and I have no
Mm,
right to be analyzing people. And especially I've seen it to be very harmful. I can have my own inside thoughts and
sure.
people and just make decisions on what level of friendship or whatever I would like to have. That does not mean that I have a free license to go tell everyone what I think of them.
Mm.
Right? You didn't give me permission to analyze you. This is not a professional relationship. I can also shut my mouth and mind my own business. There's an idea.
Yeah, there's a possibility there. And I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot of people out there that wish some people would do that, right?
Yes.
And I get that. And it's like if our listeners gathered anything from today's conversation, I hope it's this, that sometimes your body understands what's going on before your mind does,
Hmm.
right? And there are ways for us to be able to break out of those spirals. There are people for us to be able to speak to. There are professionals out there that care, right? They actually want to help you. You're not in this alone. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here today and being able to talk to everybody and let them know that they're not alone and they don't have to go through things alone, right? And
Absolutely.
it's just such a comforting thing knowing that. And I just have to say thank you so much for bringing it forward.
You are so welcome. I'm so grateful to be here. I do want to make a slight correction to something I said
Sure.
here. I said I don't want people to take it out of context. I said
Okay.
thing about words. Words don't cause trauma. And I know there's verbal abuse. What I meant by that is just someone passing you on the street being like, you bitch, that's not traumatic necessarily.
Yeah,
Right? It's
sure.
all about the relationship, the tone, the intensity, the intimidation factor. All those things can play a role in verbal abuse. And so I didn't want to diminish that. I just wanted to
Mm,
make sure that it's clear that it happens not on an intellectual level. This kind of
sure.
trauma or even lived experiences generally are not because someone said one thing to you one time. It's usually messages over a period of
Over
time,
and over.
right? Or by a
Exactly.
trusted person that you care for or their opinion of you matters and all that kind of
Hmm.
not to say blanketly like no words matter or ever hurt anybody. Just
Mm,
the way that I would say trauma happens is that subconscious, like I felt fear, I felt scared, I felt this,
mm.
right? And it's not really got anything to do with the words that are used a lot of times because someone can be smiling at you and still hurting you.
Yep. And we call that the bless your heart in the South, right? And it's unfortunate it happens. It breaks my heart too. But I do appreciate that clarification. I will tell you that is how I took it. I understood that it
Okay,
wasn't just
good.
like simple words, right? That kind of gets set across. But you are right. There is all types of abuse. And I also want to take a moment as well that if you are anywhere, there is crisis hotlines. There are people to talk to. We do have, yes, and there are nonprofits out there that want to help you. If
Yes.
you are not in a good spot, there are places out there to help.
Hmm.
So please, if you need to reach out to Dr. Kyrstin, reach out to me. Her information will be inside of the show notes. We would love to be able to help you find the services that you need. Whether that's some massage therapy or some mental health counseling and coaching, that's what we're here to do.
Absolutely.
Again, Dr. Kyrstin, it's just been such a great time getting to speak to you. I got passionate. That's how you know I enjoyed it.
I
Uh,
love it.
and I really look forward to hopefully having you on again here soon.
I would love to be back. 100%.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Perfect.
so
Well,
much.
till the next time, I look forward to it. Have a
Okay,
great rest of your day.
toodles.
Before we take off, one quick housekeeping thing. This podcast is for education and conversation only. I'm in no way a licensed therapist, doctor, wizard, and this show is not a substitute for care from a qualified professional. If something today made you think of someone you know, go ahead and do them a favor and send this episode their way. Pain is rarely a solo experience, and a good conversation is better shared. And if you're enjoying the show, make it official. Follow, subscribe, leave a review. It helps more than you realize and keeps this conversation going. Remember, the hardest part of pain to performance is learning how to listen. Now, I'll be here, same place, next play, and I can't wait to welcome you in.